Hello, my name is Willie Wisely, and welcome to Watercolor Editions, a podcast that takes you deep inside a series of new acoustic recordings that I've created, celebrating 40 years of being a songwriter. As I've recorded these new solo renditions, the memories of what inspired each of them has come flooding back, and I wanted to share that with you as we played the new Watercolor Edition and the original studio version. So, please sit back and let me paint a picture for you. Until the day I turned 30, my head was completely besotted with music. The scene and the volume and the crowds, the freaks and the danger. Yes, touring was dangerous, life-threatening even. And I was particularly addicted to this sense that the odds were against me. To be an underdog gave me purpose, so it justified being a contrarian and misbehaving and making music that didn't fit tidily into a genre, and basically was just indulging my creative whims. I would book a show anywhere, anytime, always needing to leave town, building the myth, finding a couch, or better yet, someone's bed to sleep in, and it was loud, fast, very fancy, and it ruled. Then, in 1998, a new roommate moved into my place on Park Avenue in South Minneapolis, Andy Sullivan. Besides being an enormously talented singer, guitarist, banjo player, songwriter, and redheaded troublemaking sexpot who fronted the band Steeplejack, co-fronted the band with Ben Connolly. Some of you may remember. Steeplejack and Willie Wisely played tons of shows together. Besides all that, he was also super informed about current events and just whip smart. And when his New York Times started showing up at the doorstep each morning in a blue plastic bag, I definitely took note, thinking to myself, wow, he actually reads the whole thing. Wow, he reads it really fast. So in the face of my sensualist lifestyle, he got me thinking. So I started reading it too, going deep past the front page to interviews with CEOs, sustainable architecture, New York's neediest cases, Broadway reviews, and of course the great music journalism. I was so taken with this idea of being informed, reborn really. I booked a show at the Bryant Lake Bowl called Draw Strings, where I recited, memorized newspaper articles, sometimes to music, and then I tied them into new songs that I was writing thematically. And you can imagine the show was a Herculean flop. Like, I think I remember people asking for their money back. But note to self, people prefer loud, fast, and fancy. Nonetheless, I took my pal, Andy, for a role model. Not the part where he left his dirty underwear on the bathroom floor, but the part about being a great citizen. And footnote, he's gone on to report for some of the most esteemed news organizations in the world, including beats on Capitol Hill. So I was taking my cues from the right guy. Up until my awakening, what little news I was ingesting was good, actually. You know, the Berlin Wall fell, the Cold War was over, nuclear annihilation was less assured, China was opening up, the crime rates were going down, and I remember the ozone and the bald eagles were even coming back. But in the aughts, something more insidious seemed afoot, and it started first with Bush stealing the election. Then 9/11 happened, and all the lies and the warmongering and the vengeful patriotism and the open policy of torture. And it just seemed, well, I know exactly what that is. It was the beginning of the Great Divide that now plagues the United States. The sight of Bush 44 just came to sicken me, and I needed to write a breakup song with him and all that. And the song came quickly. I remember the lyrics flowing out of me as I stood in the shallow end of my grandmother's pool in Palm Springs. It was 2006. I already had the music for it written, so it was just about turning over words in my head and making them fit a phrase. And when I got out of the pool, I picked up the guitar, and I'm thinking the first rendition of the song sounded something like this. Paint a picture for us, Willie. We stood to watch it fall. The wall that cut us all disintegrates into everyone. The things you felt were real, impossible to conceal. Fear melts away into joy. So why are we still fighting the cancer? We all know the question follows the answer. And every day I grow a little bit farther from you. And love grows smaller in the dim and the holler of your cracked worldview. I met a lot of people and people are divided, it's true. But every day's a reason for a shorter season of your cracked worldview. Yeah! The sky turned orange blaze, gone aerosol insane, like brotherhood swallowed everyone. That's when we knew we'd been blind. It crawled inside our mind and said no one loves nobody. Well, we know the love and we know the anger now. Look in the mirror, there stands a stranger. And every day I grow a little bit farther from you. And love grows smaller in the dim and the holler of your cracked worldview. I met a lot of people, people are divided, it's true. And every day's a reason for a shorter season of your cracked worldview. Yeah! That was Cracked Worldview, Watercolor Editions, the second in my year-long series of acoustic singles. You know, when I talk about songwriting, I really like to point out something technical and something for the songwriters out there or something for people who like to know what it is that makes a good song tick. So I started a little segment here called Willie's Timeout Corner because it's so punishingly technical. But hang with me here. I think you'll find it interesting. As I mentioned, Cracked Worldview is a breakup song, so it's about alienation and uncertainty about the future. Now, whether intentional or not, I wrote it with the guitar tuned down 3 half steps. The sagging strings, flapping all noisy across the frets, that gave this truly devastated sound, which was perfect for this song. The chords to the song are actually very simple, but they're made richer and made to sound more complex by a descending bass line that I'm playing on the low strings. This is a process of playing inversions, where the chord's lowest note isn't necessarily the root note being the one you'd expect to hear at the bottom. It's an unexpected note. So psychologically, it makes the song less stable, and that's what I wanted for Cracked Worldview. So I used inversions. But probably the most unsettling part of the song is the final chord. It's a suspended minor. Now, sorry, don't go nodding off on me here. I know that sounds really technical, but it's interesting. The song's in a major key, so having the final chord be a minor chord is unexpected and gives sort of an ominous feeling. Then by adding the sus note, it's a note that isn't quite in the chord. It's in the scale the chord's in, but it's not in the chord. You have this feeling of neither major nor minor. You don't know what the chord is. It's in limbo. It's lacking a center. It has no resolution. Usually a song ends with the chord that occurs most frequently in the song, and that's what gives listeners the feeling of an ending or a cue to clap. But in Cracked Worldview, I wanted something different. Here, the final chord appears nowhere else in the song, interestingly, and more agitation is added because it's struck on an offbeat and not a downbeat, and this is occurring while the song's tempo is slowing down to zero. This all adds up to just kind of feeling a perfect wreck, the depiction of the bleakness I felt about those years. You know, I think I love talking about the technical aspects of music because, backing up a bit, we can all struggle to describe our emotions, why they occur and what they are. But when you see a color on a canvas, it psychologically changes your mood. And I'm convinced that the physics of sound, of tone, of music also changes our heads. And I think this is why art matters. It explains to us who we are without using words. So we've heard the Watercolor Editions version of Cracked Worldview. Now I want to play for you the original studio recording. It was released on my 2008 album called Wisely, and my drummer and really my partner in making the entire album, Karl Petur Smith, he produced the track. And the first thing we did together was we laid down the acoustic guitar and my guide vocal. And then Peter played drums and bass over that. And I checked in with Peter, and he reminded me that the goal when he was playing drums was to make the song sound so slow that it was stoned. Now, you know, I've already played the acoustic guitar, the tempo is locked in, but he tried to play the drums so simply and so sort of behind the beat that the song would sound stoned. And we laughed. Then he played bass, and then, in a really fun stroke, we shipped the session off to Peter's coterie of Swedish musicians, notably, and pardon my pronunciation here, Kalle Gustafsson Jernholm. His band was the soundtrack of our lives. They were a big deal. Then we also sent the tracks to Ludwig Buss, and he was in a band called Ray Wonder, who were famously one of Beck's favorites. And he also played with Band of Horses. So, recording in their Swedish studios, they sent us tons of wild-eyed tracks, and some of it was so strange. I remember Ludwig sent us something played on a Philips Filicorda, which was this Stone Age amateur mini organ, and it was so cool, but we wondered where the hell to put it. It demanded so much attention, there was nowhere to put it. So what we did is we built an intro to the song. I had written the song so that it just started. You know, it's just sort of a shock attack, shock and awe, right? And instead, we decided to build an intro just so that we could feature this great sound that he sent us. After mixing in all the overdubs, interestingly, we wound up using my guide vocal for the final take, which turned out to be the case across almost the entire record, which I remember I felt uneasy about, but Peter, as my producer, said, no, these really feel honest to me, and they feel high quality, and I think we should keep them. It's really important to have a partner in the studio to get you out of your own head and to tell you when you've done something great and to leave it alone. So here it is, the original studio recording of Cracked Worldview. Paint a picture for us, Willie.
To watch it fall, the wall that cut us all disintegrates into everyone. The things you felt were real, impossible to conceal. Fear melts away into joy. So why are we still fighting the cancer? We all know the question follows the answer. And every day I go a little bit farther from you, and love grows smaller in the dim and the horror of for a shorter season of your cracked worldview. Orange blaze, gone aerosol insane, like brotherhood swallowed everyone. That's when we knew we'd been blind. It crawled inside our mind and said no one loves nobody. Well, we know the love and we know the anger. Now look in the mirror, there stands a stranger. And every day I go a little bit farther from you, and love grows smaller in the dim and the horror of your cracked worldview. I met a lot of people and people are divided, it's true. But every day's a reason for a shorter season of your cracked worldview.
That was Cracked Worldview from my album Wisely, released in 2008 on Oleo Records. Listening back to this song, it reminds me of all the heavy touring I did in the aughts. I gave hundreds of house concerts. I sang in people's homes, in their workplaces, at their cabins, at their galleries, at their comic book stores. I met so many people back in 2006, and I remember thinking, wow, this nation is cracking in half. People's feelings about the political environment, about the wars, were so disparate. It directly inspired the line, I've met a lot of people, and people are divided. It's true. Which, of course, now seems very prescient. And whenever I sing it now, I can't help but think that our problems change, but the underlying causes do not. Special bonus to accompany the release of the Watercolor Edition of Cracked Worldview. I've reissued a new high-resolution version of the original 2009 music video. Check it out. It's only at my Facebook page and at Apple Music. It's at YouTube too, but not the high-res version. Watching it again, I'm reminded that filming this was way more difficult than I expected. Brent Roski, my dear friend, talented director, he had this concept that I sing the song at half speed while he would edit it at double speed, and that would achieve this otherworldly visual appeal to it. And I'm totally into that, right? That sounds cool, except I got to the street corner and realized that I had to lip sync to the song many times over at half speed. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to talk at half speed, but it's very hard. It's slower than you think, and it's very hard to lip sync in particular because every note and every syllable is longer. And it was really like after 2 takes, like, Brent, I am done. And plus, when everything's that slow, the snare drum's only hitting like 40 times per minute. You can't keep a beat, and all the sound is garbled, so you can't distinguish the instruments from one another. You can barely distinguish the voice from the instruments. And every take of the song was 8 minutes long. When I got to the end of the video and saw that Brent cut away from me to a American flag waving in the wind, it must have been July. This reminded me, at the time I felt really odd about leaving the flag in the edit because in the wake of the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan and these bungled wars, I just felt embarrassed, frankly, to be an American. and the flag had begun to stand for values that I don't have. But we left it in, and I remember deciding in that moment that it was time for me to personally reclaim the flag, figure out what I wanted it to mean for me, and display it in that context. And, well, there's one in my front yard right now, sticking out of the top of a Black Lives Matter sign. So I believe this flag is for all of us. Well, that's all for this episode of Watercolor Editions. A special shout out to some of the people who helped bring Cracked Worldview farther out into the world: Carl Capriolio and Mark Copeland, who manned the ship at Oleo Records. You guys always encouraged me to be more of an artist, and those lessons guide me right on through till today. And Jeff Gross for getting the Wisely album pressed to vinyl. And those are available at my Bandcamp page right now for all you needle and turntable mavens. And lastly, hit the subscribe button and tune in next time to Watercolor Editions, when we will put my song True up on the easel, a song I wrote in 2004 about my days busking on a street corner in Dinkytown in Minneapolis, outside of an old storefront where Bob Dylan played his first shows as a teenager. We'll paint that watercolor picture for you, play the new version, play the original studio version, and chat it all down again on Watercolor Editions. I'm Willie Wisely, and thanks for listening.